The stars looked cold and empty in the viewing window of the Galactic Research. Vessel Celestial Dawn. Dr. Vexthara pressed 3 of her 6 arms against the glass and watched the planet below. Kepler 442b spun slowly beneath them, its surface covered in dark green forests and gray mountain ranges. It looked peaceful from space, but she knew better. This was a death world. Every creature down there was designed to kill. Still studying our target? Captain Zeleneth walked up behind her, his blue-scaled skin catching the light from the corridor. The Zelani captain was tall and thin, with large, gentle eyes that never seemed to show anger. His people were herbivores who had never known war on their homeworld. "The biodiversity readings are fascinating," Dr. Vexthara replied, her translator. Device making her clicking sounds into galactic standard. "This planet has more apex predators per square kilometer than any world in our databases." Captain Zeleneth looked uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should maintain a safe distance." "The Galactic Council only approved this mission because your people insisted on studying Death World ecosystems." Dr. Vexthara turned 2 of her eyes toward him while keeping 4 focused on the planet. The Vorthak had evolved from hunters themselves, though they had moved beyond such primitive needs long ago. "Knowledge is never dangerous, Captain. Only ignorance kills." A loud beeping sound filled the corridor. Both of them turned toward the bridge as Commander Gregtol's voice boomed over the communication system. "All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We have detected an unknown vessel." They hurried through the curved hallways of the ship. The Celestial Dawn was a marvel of galactic engineering, built by 12 different species working together. The walls were smooth and white, with soft lighting that adjusted to each crew member's visual needs. It was designed to be comfortable for everyone, a symbol of galactic unity. The bridge was already busy when they arrived. Commander Gregtol stood at the center, his massive frame making the other aliens look small. The Korath were warriors, bred for combat on a world where only the strongest survived. His red skin was covered in natural armor plating, and his 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through metal. "Report," Captain Zeleneth said as he took his position. "Unknown vessel detected on the planet's surface," Gregtol replied, his voice deep and rough. "It crashed 3 days ago in Sector 7. The ship appears to be of human origin." Dr. Vexthara felt her interest spike. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. They came from a death world called Earth, but most galactic. Species considered them primitive. Their technology was crude, their lifespans short, and their bodies weak compared to evolved species like the Korath. "Are there survivors?" she asked. The ship's science officer, a small gray alien named Piptek, worked at his console. "Long. Range scans show 1 life sign. The human appears to be alive and moving around the crash site." "Foolish creature," Gregtol muttered. "It should have activated a distress beacon immediately. Does it not understand how dangerous that world is?" Captain Zeleneth studied the tactical display. "Perhaps we should rescue this human. The Galactic Council promotes cooperation between species." "Or we could observe," Dr. Vexthara suggested. "This is a unique opportunity to study how a primitive species interacts with a death world ecosystem. The scientific value could be enormous." Gregtol's eyes narrowed. "You want to watch it die?" "I want to understand how it survives," she corrected. "Humans evolved on a death world. They might have adaptations we have not discovered." Captain Zeleneth considered this. "The Zelani were naturally curious, and the mission was supposed to be about scientific discovery." "Very well. We will observe for now, but if the human faces immediate danger, we will intervene." They moved the ship to a safe distance and activated the advanced surveillance equipment. The main screen showed a detailed view of the crash site. A small human vessel sat in a clearing, its hull cracked and smoking. The ship was crude compared to galactic standards, made of basic metals and simple electronics. "There," Piptek pointed. To movement near the ship, a figure emerged from the wreckage. The human was smaller than Gregtol, but larger than Dr. Vexthara. It wore some kind of protective clothing and moved with careful, measured steps. The creature had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head covered in short dark hair. Its skin was pale. compared to most galactic species. Scan shows the human is male, Piptech reported. Age approximately 30 standard years. He appears to be injured but mobile. Dr. Vextara watched with fascination as the human moved around his ship. He was collecting items from the wreckage, probably trying to salvage useful equipment. His movements were efficient and purposeful, not the panicked actions she might have expected from a primitive species. "What is his name?" Captain Zeleneth asked. Piptech worked his console. "According to the ship's identification, he is Sergeant Jake Morrison of the Terran Colonial Defense Force." "A soldier," Gregtel noted with some approval. "That explains why he is not panicking. Military training helps even primitive species." On the screen, Jake Morrison had stopped moving. He was looking toward the forest that surrounded his crash site. Dr. Vextara enhanced the image and saw what had caught his attention. Something large was moving through the trees. "Magnify Section 4, she ordered. The image zoomed in on the forest edge. A massive creature stepped into view, and several of the bridge crew made sounds of alarm. It was a razor claw, one of the planet's most dangerous predators. The beast was as large as a ground vehicle, covered in thick scales that could stop most weapons. Its name came from the curved claws on its feet, each one as long as a human arm. "The human is about to die," Gregtel said factly, but Jake Morrison was not running. He stood perfectly still, watching the razor claw as it approached. The predator moved slowly, and Dr. Vextara noticed something strange about its gait. "The creature is injured," she announced. "Look at how it favors its left side." The razor claw limped into the clearing, a deep gash visible across its flank. Blood had dried on its scales, and it moved with obvious pain. It should have been weak, but it was still one of the most dangerous animals on the planet. Jake Morrison did something that made the entire bridge crew go silent. He stepped toward the wounded predator. "Is he insane?" Piptech whispered. The human approached the razor claw slowly, his hands visible and empty. The massive predator watched him, but did not attack. Morrison knelt down a few meters away and began making soft sounds. The razor claw tilted its head. Listening, Dr. Vextara felt her scientific mind racing. This was impossible. Razor claws were territorial hunters that attacked anything that entered their space. They showed no social behavior beyond pack hunting, and certainly no interaction with alien species. "Record everything," she ordered. "This behavior is unprecedented." Jake Morrison moved closer to the wounded predator. The razor claw allowed him to approach until he was close enough to touch. The human examined the creature's wound, his movements. "Gentle and careful, remarkable," Captain Zeleneth breathed. "It is as if they understand each other." Morrison stood up and walked back to his ship. He returned with what appeared to be medical supplies from his emergency kit. The razor claw waited patiently as the human began cleaning its wound. "I have never seen anything like this," Dr. Vextara said, all 6 of her arms moving with excitement. "The human is providing medical care to a predator species. This suggests a level of empathy that surpasses our understanding of Death World evolution." Gregtel watched the scene with growing confusion. "My people have studied combat for thousands of years. Predators do not behave this way. There must be some explanation." On the screen, Jake Morrison worked carefully on the razor claw's injury. The massive predator remained still, almost docile. When he finished, Morrison stepped back and the creature sniffed at the bandage he had applied. "Perhaps," Captain Zeleneth said softly, "we have underestimated the human species." This display of compassion toward a dangerous predator shows a nobility of spirit that we did not expect. Dr. Vextara nodded, but part of her scientific mind remained puzzled. Death worlds did not usually produce empathetic species. Evolution on dangerous planets typically favored aggression and self-preservation. Yet here was a human, alone and vulnerable, choosing to help a creature that could kill him easily. "Continue monitoring," she ordered. "I want to understand how this relationship develops." As the day progressed, Jake Morrison and the razor claw remained near the crash site. The human shared some of his food with the predator, and the creature seemed to accept his presence. It was a scene that challenged everything the galactic species thought they knew about Deathworld inhabitants. None of them realized they were about to learn a very different truth about human nature. The next morning brought new surprises for the crew of the Celestial Dawn. Dr. Vexthara had barely slept, too excited by what she had witnessed the day before. She arrived at the bridge early to find that the night shift had continued monitoring Jake Morrison and his unlikely companion. "Status report," she requested from the duty officer. "The human and the Razorclaw remained together through the night," the officer replied. The Predator slept near the crash site while the human maintained a watch schedule. Dr. Vexthara studied the surveillance feeds with growing amazement. Jake Morrison was moving around his makeshift camp, and the massive Razorclaw was following him like a trained animal. The creature showed no signs of aggression, only curiosity about the human's activities. Captain Zillaneth arrived shortly after, his gentle eyes bright with interest. "How is our interspecies friendship developing?" "Better than expected, Doctor," Vexthara replied. "Watch this." She activated the real-time feed just as Jake Morrison approached the Razorclaw with fresh medical supplies. The Predator immediately lay down and exposed its wounded flank, allowing the human to change its bandages. The trust between them was remarkable. "Incredible," Captain Zillaneth whispered. "The creature is actively cooperating with medical treatment." "Commander." Gregtol's heavy footsteps announced his arrival on the bridge. The Korath warrior looked at the screen and made a disapproving sound. "This makes no sense. Razorclaws are solitary hunters. They do not form bonds with other species." "Perhaps our databases are incomplete," Dr. Vexthara suggested. "We may have underestimated the social intelligence of these creatures." Jake Morrison finished treating the Razorclaw's wound and patted the creature's massive head. The Predator made a low rumbling sound that almost seemed like pleasure. Morrison smiled and spoke to it in soft tones, though the surveillance equipment could not pick up his words clearly. "The human appears to be talking to it," Captain Zillaneth observed. "Primitive species often speak to animals," Gregtol replied. "It does not mean the creature understands." But as they watched, Jake Morrison pointed toward the forest and made a gesture with his hand. The Razorclaw immediately looked in that direction, then back at the human. Morrison nodded and made another gesture. The Predator stood up and walked a few steps toward the trees, then stopped and looked back. "It looked like communication," Dr. Vexthara said, her scientific excitement growing. "The human gave a command and the creature responded appropriately." "Impossible," Gregtol muttered. "Razorclaws cannot be trained. They are wild predators." Jake Morrison walked over to his damaged ship and began removing more equipment. The Razorclaw watched him work but did not interfere. When Morrison pulled out what appeared to be food containers, the Predator's attention focused immediately. "He is feeding it again," Captain Zillaneth noted. "This confirms the empathetic behavior we observed yesterday." Morrison opened one of the containers and offered some of the contents to the Razorclaw. The creature sniffed carefully before accepting the food. It ate slowly, showing none of the aggressive feeding behavior that was typical of its species. "This is remarkable," Dr. Vexthara said. "The human is sharing his limited food supplies with a predator. On a death world, resources are typically scarce. This level of altruism suggests advanced social development." Gregtol crossed his forearms. "Or it suggests stupidity. The human will starve if he continues feeding that creature." But Jake Morrison seemed to have plenty of food. He ate his own meal while the Razorclaw finished its portion, then stored the remaining containers back in his ship. His movements were calm and efficient, showing no signs of concern about resource scarcity. "Perhaps humans are better prepared for survival than we assumed," Captain Zillaneth suggested. Dr. Vexthara was already making notes in her research files. "This interaction challenges our understanding of death world evolution. We assumed that dangerous environments would produce only aggressive, self-centered species. But this human displays remarkable empathy and altruism." As the day progressed, Jake Morrison began working on repairs to his ship. The Razorclaw remained nearby, sometimes watching the human work and sometimes resting in the shade. The Predator seemed completely relaxed, showing none of the constant alertness that was typical of its species. The creature appears to feel safe with the human, Dr. Vexthara observed. This suggests a level of trust that should be impossible between species. My people have legends of ancient warriors who could bond with fierce beasts, Grechtel said reluctantly. But those are just stories. No modern species has such abilities. Jake Morrison paused in his work and looked directly at the razor claw. He made a series of hand gestures, and the predator immediately stood up and walked to a different position. Morrison pointed to the ground, and the creature lay down exactly where he had indicated. "He's giving it commands," Captain Zillineth said in amazement, "and it is obeying perfectly." "This is unprecedented," Dr. Vexthara added. "We are witnessing the formation of an interspecies partnership in real time." Grechtel studied the screen with growing unease. Something about this feels wrong. Predators do not behave this way, no matter how much food they are given. But the evidence was clear. Jake Morrison had somehow gained the complete trust and cooperation of one of the planet's most dangerous creatures. He continued working on his ship while the Razorclaw served as a living guardian, its massive presence ensuring that no other predators approached the crash site. The human has essentially domesticated a wild predator in less than 2 days, Dr. Vexthara marveled. This suggests cognitive abilities far beyond what we expected from this species. As afternoon turned to evening, Jake Morrison began preparing for another night. He gathered wood for a fire and arranged his equipment in an organized manner. The Razorclaw watched his preparations with what appeared to be understanding. "Look at how it anticipates his needs," Captain Zillineth pointed out. When he reached for the fire-starting equipment, the creature moved to give him more space. "Remarkable intelligence," Dr. Vexthara agreed. "Both species are adapting to each other's presence." Jake Morrison lit his fire as darkness fell across the planet. The Razorclaw settled down nearby, positioning itself between the human and the surrounding forest. Its massive form created an effective barrier against any other predators that might approach. "The creature is protecting him," Captain Zillineth observed. "This has moved beyond simple feeding behavior into active cooperation." Dr. Vexthara was documenting everything in her research files. "This challenges our fundamental understanding of Deathworld ecosystems. We assumed that such environments would produce only competitive, aggressive species. But this human has demonstrated advanced social skills and empathetic behavior. Perhaps we have been too quick to judge Deathworld species as primitive," Captain Zillineth suggested. "This human shows wisdom and compassion that many galactic species lack." Grechtel remained silent, but his warrior instincts were telling him something was not right. The behavior they were witnessing was too perfect, too controlled. In his experience, nothing in nature was this orderly. As the night deepened, Jake Morrison settled down to sleep while the Razorclaw maintained watch. The predator's eyes glowed in the darkness, scanning the forest for any threats. It had fully accepted the role of guardian, protecting a creature that should have been its prey. "This is the most extraordinary interspecies interaction ever recorded," Dr. Vexthara said softly. "The human has achieved something that our most advanced xenobiologists thought impossible." The crew of the Celestial Dawn watched in fascination as the unlikely pair settled into their second night together. None of them suspected that they were witnessing not compassion, but the beginning of something far more dangerous. Jake Morrison lay quietly by his fire, but his mind was already planning the next phase of his mission. The aliens believed they were observing mercy and empathy from a primitive species. They had no idea they were watching a predator far more dangerous than any creature that walked the surface of Kepler 442b. Tomorrow would bring new revelations that would challenge everything they thought they knew about human nature. Dr. Vexthara had been monitoring Jake Morrison for 5 days now, and each day brought new surprises. The human's relationship with the Razorclaw had grown stronger, but something else was happening that made her scientific mind race with questions. "Captain, you need to see this," she called as Captain Zillineth entered the observation deck. The main screen showed Morrison working around his crash site, but his activities had changed dramatically. Instead of just repairing his ship, He was building structures using pieces of metal and equipment from the wreckage. The constructions were strange, unlike anything in the galactic databases. "What is he making?" Captain Zelenev asked, his large eyes studying the screen. "That is what concerns me," Dr. Vexthara replied. "These structures serve no obvious purpose. They are not defensive walls or shelters. They appear to be training equipment." Morrison had created obstacles course-made from salvaged materials. There were barriers to jump over, poles to weave between, and platforms at different heights. The Razor Claw, which the crew had started calling Alpha, was moving through the course while Morrison watched and made notes. "Perhaps he is entertaining." "The creature," Captain Zelenev suggested. "Play behavior exists in many species." But Dr. Vexthara was not convinced. She had watched Morrison guide Alpha through the same sequence of movements multiple times. Each repetition was more precise than the last. This was not play, it was training. Commander Gregtal arrived on the bridge, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence. "The human's behavior is becoming more suspicious," he announced. "My security teams have been analyzing his activities." "What have you discovered?" Dr. Vexthara asked. "He is not just caring for one creature anymore," Gregtal replied, activating a new surveillance feed. 3 more Razor Claws have appeared in the area. The screen showed Morrison's camp from above. 3 additional Razor Claws were visible at the edges of the clearing, all watching the human with interest. They kept their distance but showed no signs of leaving. "Remarkable," Captain Zelenev breathed. "His compassionate nature is attracting more of these creatures." Dr. Vexthara was not so sure. She enhanced the image and studied the positioning of the new arrivals. "Look at how they are arranged. They are not randomly distributed. They have taken up positions that form a perimeter around the camp." "Defensive positioning," Gregtal noted with professional interest, "but wild animals do not coordinate defensive strategies." Morrison walked toward one of the new Razor Claws, carrying what appeared to be medical supplies. The creature had visible injuries on its back legs, deep cuts that looked recent. It allowed Morrison to approach and examine the wounds, just as Alpha had done days earlier. "He is treating this one too," Captain Zelenev observed. "The human's capacity for empathy extends to multiple individuals." But Dr. Vexthara noticed something else. Morrison's medical treatment was more efficient this time. He worked quickly and confidently, as if he had done this many times before. The new Razor Claw submitted to his care without resistance, despite being a wild predator. "This is the 3rd injured Razor Claw he has encountered," she said slowly. "What are the chances of finding so many wounded predators in one small area?" "Low," Gregtal admitted, "unless something is hunting them." Morrison finished treating the wounded Razor Claw and moved on to the next one. This creature also had injuries, bite marks on its neck that suggested a fight with another predator. Morrison cleaned and bandaged these wounds with the same careful efficiency. "He is becoming quite skilled at this," Captain Zelenev noted. "Practice has improved his technique." Dr. Vexthara was making rapid calculations in her head. The probability of finding 4 injured Razor Claws in one location is approximately 0.003%. Either this human is incredibly lucky or something else is happening. Morrison had finished treating the 2nd new arrival and was approaching the 3rd. This Razor Claw was the largest they had seen, with scars covering its armored hide. It watched Morrison with intelligent eyes as he examined its wounds. "This one is different," Gregtal observed. "Look at its posture. It is not submissive like the others." The scarred Razor Claw stood perfectly still as Morrison worked on its injuries, but its head was raised and alert. It was allowing the treatment, but it was also evaluating the human. This was not the behavior of a grateful patient. It was the behavior of a recruit being tested. "I need to run some calculations," Dr. Vexthara said, moving to her workstation. "The patterns we are seeing do not match natural behavior." She began analyzing the data from 5 days of observation. Morrison's activities, the arrival of injured predators, the timing of each encounter, everything was being fed into her analytical programs. "What are you looking for?" Captain Zelenoff asked. Evidence of artificial patterns, she replied. If this is natural behavior, it should show random variations. If it is controlled behavior, there will be mathematical signatures. The results appeared on her screen within minutes. Dr. Vexthara felt her breath catch as she read the analysis. The probability curves were all wrong. The timing was too regular, the injuries too consistent, the behavioral responses too predictable. This is not natural, she announced. The mathematical probability of these events occurring randomly is less than 1 in 10 million. Captain Zelenoff looked confused. What does that mean? It means the human is not finding wounded predators by chance, Dr. Vexthara explained. He is either causing their injuries or he knows where to find them. And the creatures are not responding to his kindness. They are responding to training. On the screen, Morrison had finished treating the third Razorclaw and was walking back toward his camp. All 4 predators fell into formation behind him, moving in perfect synchronization. They were no longer individual animals, they were a unit. By the sacred fires, Grigtel whispered. They are following military formation. Protocols. Morrison stopped and turned to face his 4 companions. He raised his hand and made a gesture. All 4 Razorclaws immediately spread out, taking up defensive positions around the camp. Morrison made another gesture, and they all lay down in unison. He is commanding them, Captain Zelenoff said in amazement. But how is this possible? Dr. Vexthara was studying the formation patterns. These are not random positions. Each Razorclaw has been placed to provide optimal coverage of the surrounding area. This is a defensive strategy that requires advanced tactical knowledge. Morrison walked over to his supplies and began preparing food. But instead of just feeding himself and Alpha, he prepared 4 separate portions. Each Razorclaw received its meal at exactly the same time, and they all began eating on Morrison's signal. Coordinated feeding, Grigtel noted. This is how military units maintain discipline and unity. But why would a stranded human need a military unit? Captain Zelenoff asked. Dr. Vexthara was beginning to suspect that Jake Morrison was not as stranded as he appeared. Perhaps we should question our assumptions about this human situation. Morrison finished his meal and began walking around the perimeter of his camp. The 4 Razorclaws watched him carefully, and Dr. Vexthara realized they were learning his patrol pattern. Tomorrow, they would probably patrol without him. This is not rescue behavior, she said quietly. This is recruitment behavior. What do you mean? Captain Zelenoff asked. The human is not helping injured animals out of compassion, Dr. Vexthara explained. He is selecting and training specific individuals for a purpose we do not yet understand. Grigtel was studying the tactical display with growing concern. My people have used similar techniques to build military units. You find individuals. With the right characteristics, you provide them with care and resources, and you train them to follow orders. But to what end? Captain Zelenoff asked. What would a stranded human need with trained predators? Before anyone could answer, new movement appeared on the surveillance feeds. 2 more Razorclaws were approaching Morrison's camp, and both showed signs of recent injuries. Morrison looked up from his work and smiled as if he had been expecting. Them 6, Dr. Vexthara whispered. He will have 6 of them by tomorrow. This is no longer a rescue situation, Grigtel declared. This human is building an army. Captain Zelenoff still looked confused. But armies are for fighting. What? Could this human possibly need to fight? Dr. Vexthara felt a chill run through her 6 arms as she realized the terrible possibility. Perhaps, she said slowly, the question is not what he needs to fight, but who he is planning to fight. Morrison was walking toward the 2 new arrivals, medical supplies in his hands and a confident smile on his face. The transformation from helpless crash survivor to military commander was almost complete. The aliens watching him were about to learn that human compassion was not always what it seemed to be. The next day would bring revelations that would change everything they thought they knew about the human species. The 7th day of observation brought the event that changed everything. Dr. Vexthara was reviewing data from the night shift when alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Emergency lights flashed red as the crew rushed to their stations. "What is happening?" Captain Zillineth demanded as he ran onto the bridge. "Multiple predator signatures approaching Morrison's location," the sensor operator reported. "Large pack movement from the south." The main screen showed the source of the alarm. A group of 8 creatures was moving through the forest toward Morrison's camp, but these were not razorclaws. They were shadow stalkers. The other apex predator species on Kepler 442b, shadow stalkers, were faster than razorclaws, with razor-sharp teeth and pack-hunting instincts that made them extremely dangerous. "The human is about to face his first real test," Commander Graktel observed. "Shadow stalkers and razorclaws are natural enemies. This will be a fight to the death." Dr. Vextara watched with growing anxiety as the shadow stalkers approached Morrison's clearing. The human had 6 razorclaws with him now, but 8 shadow stalkers. Would be a serious challenge. She expected to see Morrison take cover behind his trained predators while they fought for survival. What happened next made her question everything she thought she knew about Deathworld species. Jake Morrison did not hide. He did not panic. Instead, he calmly walked to the center of his camp and made a series of hand signals. The 6 razorclaws immediately responded, moving into formation with military precision. But this was not a defensive formation, it was an attack pattern. "By the sacred stars," Captain Zillineth whispered. "They are advancing toward the shadow stalkers." Morrison raised his right hand and pointed toward the approaching enemy pack. The razorclaws began moving forward in perfect coordination. 2 moved to flank left, 2 moved to flank right, and 2 advanced directly forward. It was a textbook pincer movement that any military academy would recognize. "This is impossible," Graktel muttered. "Wild predators cannot execute complex tactical maneuvers." But the evidence was right in front of them. Morrison's razorclaws were not fighting like wild animals. They were fighting like trained soldiers. The first shadow stalker to reach the clearing was immediately surrounded by 3 razorclaws working in perfect coordination. One attacked from the front to distract it, while the other 2 struck from the sides. "They are using pack tactics," Dr. Vextara noted, "but not natural pack tactics. These are advanced military strategies." Morrison stood in his camp, calmly observing the battle while making occasional hand signals. Each gesture caused his razorclaws to adjust their positions or change their attack patterns. He was directing the entire fight like a field commander? How is he controlling them so precisely? Captain Zillineth asked in amazement. "Training," Graktel replied grimly. "Intensive, professional military training. This human has turned wild predators into soldiers." The shadow stalkers were fierce fighters, but they were not prepared for organized resistance. They expected to face territorial razorclaws fighting as individuals. Instead, they encountered a coordinated unit that worked together with deadly efficiency. One shadow stalker tried to break through the center of the formation, but Morrison made a sharp gesture and 2 razorclaws immediately moved to block its path. The creature found itself trapped between 4 enemies, all attacking from different angles. "The coordination is perfect," Dr. Vextara observed. "There is no wasted movement, no confusion. Each razorclaw knows exactly what the others will do." Another shadow stalker attempted to circle around and attack Morrison directly, probably recognizing him as the leader of the group. But Morrison had anticipated this. He made a subtle hand signal, and one of his razorclaws peeled off from the main fight to intercept the flanking enemy. "He predicted that attack," Graktel noted with professional admiration. "This human understands battlefield tactics better than most galactic military officers." The fight was over in less than 10 minutes. The shadow stalkers were either dead or fleeing back into the forest. Morrison's razorclaws had won a complete victory with minimal injuries. They regrouped around their human commander, awaiting his next orders. "Incredible," Captain Zillineth breathed. 6 against 8, and they won decisively. Morrison examined each of his razorclaws for injuries and provided medical treatment where needed. But his movements were quick and efficient, like A commander checking his troops after a successful mission. There was no panic, no concern, only professional competence. Dr. Vexthara felt her understanding of human nature crumbling. This was not a desperate fight for survival. This was a planned military engagement. What do you mean? Captain Zilineth asked. Look at Morrison's behavior, she explained. He is not relieved or grateful. He is satisfied like someone whose plan worked perfectly. I believe he expected this attack. Gregtol was studying the tactical recordings. The positioning of his camp, the training exercises, the formation patterns, everything was designed for this type of engagement. This human has been preparing for war. Morrison was now collecting items from the battlefield. The bodies of the dead Shadowstalkers contained materials that could be useful, teeth, claws, and hide that could be turned into weapons or tools. He worked with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. He is harvesting resources from the enemy dead, Dr. Vexthara observed. This suggests long-term planning beyond simple survival. But the most disturbing revelation came when Morrison finished his battlefield salvage. He looked directly at the Celestial Dawn's concealed observation position and smiled. Then he raised his hand and gave a small wave. The bridge fell silent. Morrison was looking straight at their surveillance equipment despite its advanced cloaking technology. He knew he was being watched, and he wanted them to know that he knew. How is that possible? Captain Zilineth whispered. Our cloaking systems are the best in the galaxy, the sensor operator confirmed. There is no way a primitive species could detect us. But Morrison's smile suggested otherwise. He spoke a few words to his razor claws, and they immediately began moving into new positions around the camp. The formation they took was clearly defensive, designed to repel an attack from above. He is positioning his forces to defend against an aerial assault, Gregtol realized. He knows we are here, and he is preparing for the possibility that we might attack. Dr. Vexthara felt a chill of fear run through her 6 arms. This human is not a stranded crash survivor. He is a military operative who has been planning this entire scenario. Morrison walked back to his ship and activated some kind of communication device. The aliens could not intercept his transmission, but they could see him speaking into the device with calm professionalism. He is reporting to someone, Captain Zilineth said with growing alarm. Which means he was never truly stranded, Dr. Vexthara concluded. This entire situation has been a deception. Gregtol was analyzing the tactical implications. If this human can train apex predators in 7 days, if he can detect our best surveillance technology, and if he has been in communication with his forces the entire time, then we are not observing a primitive species. We are dealing with a military threat. Morrison finished his communication and looked up at their position again. This time his smile was not friendly. It was the smile of a predator who had just revealed his true nature. The aliens realized that they had been watching the wrong species all along. The human was not the prey on this death world. He was the apex predator, and they had just learned how dangerous that could be. Emergency meeting, Captain Zilineth ordered. All senior staff? We need to reassess everything we thought we knew about this situation. As the crew prepared for their meeting, Jake Morrison continued his work below. He had 7 days to prepare for what came next, and he intended to use every minute. The real mission was about to begin. The emergency meeting in the conference room was unlike any gathering in the ship's history. Captain Zilineth sat at the head of the table, his usually calm demeanor replaced by visible worry. Dr. Vexthara had her research data spread across multiple displays, while Commander Gregtol studied tactical readouts with growing concern. Let me understand this correctly, Captain Zilineth began. You believe this human has been deceiving us from the beginning? The evidence is overwhelming, Dr. Vexthara replied, activating her primary analysis screen. Mathematical probability. Analysis shows that every event we observed was planned in advance. The crash location, the injured predators, the timing of each encounter, none of it was random. Science Officer Piptek raised a concern. But why would a human go to such elaborate lengths to deceive us? What could he possibly gain? Before anyone could answer, new alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The duty officer's voice came over the communication system with barely controlled panic. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We have detected incoming vessels. They rushed to the bridge to find chaos. The main display showed multiple ship signatures approaching from hyperspace. The vessels were sleek and dangerous looking, clearly military in design. How many ships? Captain Zillaneth demanded. 12 confirmed contacts, the sensor operator replied. All human design. They are armed warships. Dr. Vexthara felt her heart sinking. The communication device. Morrison was calling for backup. Commander Greichtel was studying the tactical display with professional interest. These are not rescue ships. This is a battle fleet. We are looking at destroyers, cruisers, and what appears to be a command vessel. The lead human ship opened communication channels. A stern-faced woman appeared on the screen, wearing a military uniform that marked her as higher-ranking officer. Her voice was calm and professional when she spoke. Alien vessel, this is Admiral Lisa Carter of the Terran Colonial Fleet. You will prepare to be boarded for inspection. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. Captain Zillaneth activated the reply channel. Admiral Carter, I am Captain Zillaneth of the Galactic research vessel Celestial Dawn. We are on a peaceful scientific mission. We have done nothing to warrant military action. Admiral Carter's expression did not change. Captain, you have been conducting unauthorized surveillance of Terran personnel for 7 days. Your vessel has been designated a security threat. Prepare for boarding. The communication ended abruptly. Dr. Vexthara stared at the screen in shock. Surveillance? We were observing what we believed was a stranded survivor. We were tricked, Greichtel said grimly. This entire situation was designed to lure us into a compromising position. The human fleet moved into attack formation around the Celestial Dawn. The alien ship was completely surrounded, with no possibility of escape. Captain Zillaneth realized that any attempt to flee would result in immediate destruction. But why? He asked desperately. What could humans possibly want from us? On the planet below, Jake Morrison was packing his equipment with calm efficiency. His 7 razor claws stood in formation around him, awaiting orders. Morrison activated his communication device and spoke briefly to Admiral Carter. Mission phase 1 complete, he reported. Target vessel secured. Predator assets ready for phase 2. Dr. Vexthara enhanced the surveillance feed and watched Morrison's preparations. He was never stranded. This was a planned operation from the beginning. Morrison walked over to his supposedly damaged ship and activated hidden systems. The vessel, which had appeared broken and smoking for 7 days, suddenly came to life. Engine systems activated, weapons powered up, and advanced scanning equipment emerged from concealed compartments. The crash was staged, Dr. Vexthara whispered. Everything was a lie. Transport ships began descending from the human fleet toward the planet's surface. Morrison guided them to landing zones he had prepared around his camp. Hundreds of human soldiers disembarked, along with scientific equipment and construction. Materials. They are establishing a permanent base, Greichtel observed. This is not a rescue operation, it is an invasion. Morrison's razor claws moved to designated positions around the landing zone, serving as living perimeter guards. The human soldiers worked with remarkable efficiency, setting up defensive positions and communication arrays. Within hours, a military installation was taking shape in the clearing. Admiral Carter's voice came over the communication system again. Captain Zillaneth, you and your senior staff will report to the main hangar bay for transfer. Non-essential personnel will remain under guard aboard your vessel. What are your intentions? Captain Zillaneth asked. That will be explained during your debriefing. Admiral Carter replied coldly. Dr. Vexthara felt a terrible realization dawning. They want our ship. They want our technology and our scientific data? More than that, Greichtel added. They want information about galactic defenses, shipping routes, and military capabilities. This was intelligence gathering on a massive scale. Human boarding parties arrived within the hour. The soldiers were professional and efficient, securing the ship without violence but with unmistakable authority. Captain Zeleneth and his senior staff were escorted to a transport vessel and taken to Admiral Carter's command ship. The human admiral met them in a sterile briefing room. She was tall and confident, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Her eyes were cold and calculating as she studied her alien prisoners. "Gentlemen, you have been observing one of our most successful field operatives," Admiral Carter began. "Sergeant Morrison specializes in psychological warfare and enemy manipulation." Dr. Vexthara found her voice. "You used our compassion against us." "Correct," Admiral Carter replied without emotion. "Our intelligence indicated that Galactic species would interpret Morrison's actions as primitive empathy rather than sophisticated military strategy. Your response patterns were exactly as predicted." Captain Zeleneth was struggling to understand. "But why? We meant you no harm. We were simply conducting research." "Research that involves studying Death World ecosystems for potential military applications," Admiral Carter stated. "Your own databases contain detailed analysis of how to weaponize dangerous predators." Dr. Vexthara felt sick. "We would never use that research for military purposes." "Perhaps not," Admiral Carter acknowledged. "But other species might. Humanity has learned that knowledge can be more dangerous than weapons when it falls into the wrong hands." Morrison's voice came over the communication system from the planet below. "Admiral, Phase 2 is complete. Local predator population is under full control. Recommend proceeding to Phase 3. "Acknowledged, Sergeant," Admiral Carter replied. Then she turned back to her prisoners. "Sergeant Morrison now commands an army of trained apex predators. Your surveillance data has provided us with detailed intelligence about galactic technology and tactics, and your ship will be thoroughly examined by our technical teams." "You planned this entire operation just to capture us?" Captain Zeleneth asked. "Not just to capture you," Admiral Carter corrected. "To demonstrate a fundamental truth about human nature. What you interpreted as mercy was actually the most effective form of warfare, psychological manipulation, combined with strategic deception." Greichtel spoke for the first time since boarding the human ship. "Your species is more dangerous than any predator we have encountered." "Exactly," Admiral Carter agreed. "And now you understand why humanity should not be underestimated. The galaxy has made the mistake of assuming that Death World species are primitive and harmless. Today, that assumption ended." Dr. Vexthara realized the full scope of what had happened. "You wanted us to witness Morrison's capabilities. You wanted us to report back to the galactic community." "Among other things," Admiral Carter confirmed. "Consider this a diplomatic message. Humanity is ready to take its place among the galactic powers, but it will be on our terms." The implications were staggering. Humanity had turned a simple rescue scenario into a demonstration of military superiority, psychological warfare, and technological capability. They had proven that human compassion was not weakness, but a sophisticated weapon. Captain Zeleneth looked at his captors with new understanding. "We thought we were observing a primitive species learning to survive on a death world." "You were observing a Death World species teaching apex predators how to be soldiers," Admiral Carter corrected. "There is a significant difference. The human fleet had achieved complete victory without firing a single shot. They had captured an advanced research vessel, gathered intelligence on galactic capabilities, and demonstrated their own superiority through pure psychological manipulation." Morrison's voice came over the communication system again. "Admiral, the base is fully operational. Predator training programs are ready for expansion. We can begin recruiting additional species whenever you give the order." Admiral Carter smiled for the first time since the meeting began. It was not a friendly expression. "Phase 4 will begin tomorrow, Sergeant. Prepare for long-term operations." 3 days later, Dr. Vexthara sat in the human detention facility aboard Admiral Carter's command ship, staring at reports that changed everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. The documents spread before her contained intelligence. That made her scientific mind reel with implications. "This cannot be accurate," she said to Captain Zillineth, who sat across from her in the sterile white room. "According to these files, humans have been observing our species for over 2 years." Captain Zillineth looked older than he had just days before. The gentle Zilani leader had been forced to confront truths about galactic politics that shattered his peaceful worldview. "The evidence is undeniable. They knew we were coming to this system before we even left our home base." Commander Greichtel paced the small room like a caged predator. Even his warrior training had not prepared him for this level of strategic deception. "They have been watching all of us. Our shipping routes, our military exercises, our scientific missions, everything." The door opened and Admiral Carter entered, followed by 2 human guards. She carried a data tablet and wore the same professional expression she had maintained throughout their captivity. Her presence filled the room with quiet authority. "I trust you have had time to review our intelligence files," Admiral Carter sighed, taking a seat across from her prisoners. Dr. Vexthara gestured at the scattered reports. "You have been spying on the galactic community for years." "Why?" "Because knowledge is survival," Admiral Carter replied simply. "When humanity first made contact with galactic civilization, we were dismissed as a primitive death world species. Your own databases classified us as technologically inferior and socially underdeveloped." "Those assessments were based on standard evaluation criteria," Captain Zillineth protested weakly. "Criteria that failed to account for human adaptability." Admiral Carter continued. "While you were categorizing us as harmless, we were learning everything about your species, your technology, and your weaknesses." Morrison's voice came over the communication system from the planet below. "Admiral, local operations are proceeding ahead of schedule. We now have 43 trained predators in active service. Request permission to begin Phase 5. "Granted." "Sergeant," Admiral Carter replied, "begin expanding operations to neighboring systems." Dr. Vexthara felt her heart's racing. "Neighboring systems? How many of these operations are you conducting?" "Kepler 442b is just one of 17 similar installations," Admiral Carter revealed. "Humanity has been establishing forward bases throughout this sector for the past year. Each one uses locally trained predators as security forces." The implications were staggering. Humans had not just deceived them about one stranded soldier. They had been running a massive military expansion operation disguised as random encounters with primitive survivors. "But why reveal this to us now?" Captain Zillineth asked. "Why not continue the deception?" Admiral Carter stood and walked to the viewing window that showed the planet below. Morrison's base was clearly visible, surrounded by organized groups of predators that moved with military precision. "Because the expansion phase is complete, we no longer need to hide our capabilities." "What do you want from us?" Dr. Vexthara asked. "To deliver a message," Admiral Carter replied, turning back. "To face them. The galactic community has operated under the assumption that Death World species are primitive and harmless. That assumption has now been proven dangerously false." Greichtel stopped pacing and faced the human admiral. "You want us to tell our governments that humanity is a threat?" "I want you to tell your governments that humanity is a reality," Admiral Carter corrected. "We are not asking for permission to exist. We are informing you that we already do." The communication system activated again, this time with a different voice. "Admiral Carter, this is Colonel Ryan Mitchell reporting from the Vega system. Operation Shepherdess is complete. Local predator species have been successfully integrated into defensive operations." "Acknowledged, Colonel," Admiral Carter replied. "Continue with Phase 6 protocols." Dr. Vexthara realized the full scope of what she was hearing. "You have operations in the Vega system too? That is Korath space." "We have operations in everyone's space," Admiral Carter confirmed. "The galaxy is smaller than you think when you know how to move through it undetected." Captain Zillineth looked defeated. "What happens to us now?" "You will be returned to your governments with full documentation of what you have witnessed," Admiral Carter explained. "Your ship will be repaired and upgraded with some of our technology as a gesture of good faith." Good faith? Grechtel snarled. You have invaded our space and captured our vessel. We have demonstrated our capabilities and offered you a choice. Admiral Carter replied calmly. You can work with us as equals, or you can continue to underestimate us as primitives. The first option leads to cooperation and mutual benefit. The second leads to more unpleasant surprises. Morrison appeared on the communication screen, his face calm and professional. Admiral, we have received contact from 3 more galactic research vessels in nearby systems. They are all investigating stranded human survivors. Standard protocol, Sergeant, Admiral Carter replied. Allow them to observe until they understand the situation, then arrange for diplomatic contact. Dr. Vexthara felt sick. How many? More ships are walking into the same trap we did? Every major galactic power has at least one research vessel currently observing human survivors, Admiral Carter revealed. By the end of this week, every government in the galaxy will have received the same message you are taking home. Which is? Captain Zelenev asked. That humanity has evolved beyond your ability to categorize or control us, Admiral Carter stated. We are not seeking conflict, but we will not be treated as inferiors. The door opened and several human technicians entered carrying equipment that Dr. Vexthara recognized as communication devices. Admiral Carter gestured for them to set up the equipment on the table. You will now contact your respective governments, Admiral Carter announced. You will inform them that first contact protocols have been successfully completed and that humanity is ready to begin formal diplomatic relations. Under your terms? Grechtel said bitterly. Under realistic terms, Admiral Carter corrected. Terms that acknowledge what we actually are, not what you assumed we were. Captain Zelenev activated the communication device with trembling hands. This is Captain Zelenev of the Celestial Dawn, reporting emergency contact with previously unknown human capabilities. As the 3 alien leaders began their difficult reports to their home governments, Morrison's voice came over the communication system one final time. Admiral, the Predator training facility is fully operational. We can begin accepting students from other death worlds whenever you are ready to expand the program. Excellent work, Sergeant, Admiral Carter replied. Begin preparations for the next phase of operations. Dr. Vexthara paused in her report as she realized what she had just heard. You are planning to train predators from other death worlds? We are planning to establish a galactic academy for death world species, Admiral Carter confirmed. It turns out that what you call primitive species have quite a lot to teach each other about survival and adaptation. The future of galactic civilization had just shifted fundamentally. Humanity had proven that compassion could be weaponized, that mercy could be a trap, and that the most dangerous predators were not the ones with claws and teeth, but the ones with intelligence and patience. As the alien leaders continued their reports, Jake Morrison remained on the planet below, surrounded by his army of trained predators. The base that had started as a simple crash site was now a symbol of humanity's true place in the galaxy, not as primitives to be studied, but as apex predators to be respected. The galaxy would never underestimate Deathworld species again. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would be conducted entirely on human terms. Admiral Carter watched the alien leaders complete their communications and smiled. Phase 1 of humanity's emergence into galactic politics was complete. The real work was just beginning. In the vast darkness of space, 17 more human bases were beginning the same process with other unsuspecting research vessels. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans said they came in peace, they meant it, but peace, like everything else about humanity, would be defined by human standards. The paradigm had shifted. Deathworld species were no longer the bottom of the galactic hierarchy. They were the top, and everyone else would have to adjust accordingly.